You're listening to A Scary State, and this week we're covering Oklahoma. So, Lauren?
Yes, Nora.
Let's get scary.
Hi, everyone. So last week, we were in my old living room in our little fort that we made to record. Well, today we are recording from my new apartment.
Oh, so exciting.
It is so exciting.
It's so cool. She has like a loft, and to get to the loft, you go up like this spiral staircase. It kind of reminds me of The Princess Diaries.
Yeah. It's super cute, but like, okay, we were gonna do our living room up there because the downstairs area is really small, but they couldn't get the couches up there. So now we had to move our bed up there, and we have the couches down here, and I don't even know what we're doing with it.
Yeah, you know, hiccups have to happen.
But Joe gets here with the movers, and I was still at our old place getting ready, and he calls me, he's like, we have a problem.
Houston, we have a problem. Yeah, and then Ian and I are trying to move into our new house, but the people who did our flooring, who I shall not name them, but they know who they are, they totally messed up our flooring. All they had to do was stain it, and it was like 5 different colors. They got the stain everywhere, so we had them come back out and redo it and fix everything. So basically, Lauren and I are on the struggle bus, so.
Seriously.
So today, oh wait, you need to tell the state facts. I'm just so excited about my story that I can barely contain it.
Oh, okay. So let me get into this. So Oklahoma, nicknamed the Sooner State, joined the Union on November 16th.
Boomer Sooner.
So weird.
That's what they say. You know how they're like Roll Tide. I was watching sports, I don't know why, and then all of a sudden I hear Boomer Sooner. And I'm like, what the hell did they just say? And Ian was like, it's a sports thing. Sorry. Yeah.
I did not know. I like how you're like, I was watching sports, all of the sports. But so that state joined the Union on November 16th, 1907, and became the 46th state in the U.S. Oklahoma got its name from the Choctaw phrase Okla and Huma, which translates to honored people. So some interesting laws. Whaling is illegal, because there are so many whales in Oklahoma. Because there's no ocean.
Yeah. What? I was like, wait, am I missing something?
If you make an ugly face at a dog, you could be fined or even jailed.
Good.
Which is sometimes fun to do, because we found out that there's a yappy dog who lives like really close to us in the same apartment complex. And it decided that it really wanted to bark at 10 p.m. last night. I looked at Joe. I was like, if that keeps happening, I am going to yell at these people.
Yeah.
Anywho, so the town of Pitcher became a ghost town in 2006 after the town was declared to be dangerous to human life. So the town experienced a high level of lead in the blood and tissue of its residents, cancer levels increased, and elementary students were reading at a lower grade level, all because of a lead and zinc ore mine.
Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh. Oklahoma also has a spook light, which is an unexplained light that appears in the sky at different times and in different shapes. It only occurs on the border between Oklahoma and Missouri, but you can only see the light if you're in Oklahoma looking west.
Wow.
Which is really cool.
That's like the Henlopen, corpse light.
Yep. Pitt Road in the town of Springer has one of those weird gravity hills. So it's like where you put your car in neutral at the bottom of the hill and you'll roll uphill.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And Oklahoma even has its own Bermuda Triangle located in Beaver Sands. It is believed that a portal opened here after a UFO crashed, and now anyone who steps foot in this area just disappears.
Well, I'm not going there.
All right, Nora, what are you telling us about today?
So real quick, I just have to say that Oklahoma is wild. I watched this show, The First 48, and they follow a detective office or station in Oklahoma and Tulsa, and I think also Oklahoma City, and it is crazy. I'm sure people in Oklahoma are like, yeah, you're preaching to the choir, but there's so much crazy stuff going on there.
There's just much crazy stuff there.
Yeah, and then if you look on Murderpedia, I feel like you would never expect Oklahoma to have a ton of murders. There's so many listed.
Yep.
It's nuts. So Oklahoma, you're surprising the world right now.
Because I honestly went into Oklahoma thinking, okay, what would have even happened here? And
I
then
know.
I found
so much.
Found something good.
So much. I actually, so to find my story, I Googled high profile cases in Oklahoma because I wanted to see just what would come up, what was kind of happening there in the last few years. And then I stumbled across this case. So to start off, I would venture to say that nowadays, probably 80% or more of couples meet on dating apps, right?
That's how Joe and I met.
Exactly. Like almost every friend I have met their significant other on a dating app, and it's always awesome people. There's been some not awesome ones, but they're gone now. You know what I'm saying? There's been really cool guys though on there that my friends have met. And I feel like 80% might even be on the low end. So many people meet their people.
And then think about it, COVID was a big thing.
Exactly.
So people were meeting, you couldn't meet people in person, so you were just meeting people online.
Yeah. So, meeting your soulmate on a dating app is very common, but like anything you do in life, you have to be careful who you trust and who you let into your life. So a woman named Tiffany Eicher would definitely agree with that. Tiffany is from the city of Beggs, Oklahoma, which is located in Okmulgee.
Nailed it.
I put the pronunciation and I still had trouble.
Because I don't know what's wrong.
I struggle.
We can never do it.
Tiffany was in her early 40s and she decided to go onto Tinder to meet someone special, and she thought that she had done just that. In August of 2017, Tiffany matched with a man named Barry Titus, but unfortunately their budding romance quickly turned south. Only a month into their relationship, Barry started becoming extremely abusive to her. He would hit her, kick her, and strangle her as a way to test her. I don't know what that means.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. By 3 months into their relationship, Barry had beaten her so severely, she was in the hospital for days with cracked ribs, a lacerated liver, lacerated kidney, and bruises on her arms, legs, stomach, and neck.
Oh my God.
Horrible. Tiffany later told police that during these beatings, she would pass out and Barry would pour water on her, which would wake her up.
Oh my God.
Then he would beat and strangle her more until she passed out again.
This dude sounds like a monster.
He's that was my next line. He is a complete monster who needs to be inhumanely euthanized.
Yes.
Barry also reportedly had a serious issue with meth and heroin. I don't know for sure, but I would venture to guess he probably stole from her and or made her give him money, because that's like a common pattern in drug addicts. But anywho, the police ended up finding out about the abuse after this most recent instance of abuse I mentioned. So I'm guessing the doctor at the hospital called the police because unfortunately Tiffany did not go to the police on her own. She just wasn't in a good place mentally to stand up for herself, and as a result, she refused to cooperate with police, so no charges were filed against him. It could have been because she was scared, embarrassed, who knows?
And it's a thing, people who are in that cycle just don't go to the police. They're sometimes scared,
Exactly. 3 months later, in February of 2018, Tiffany went to Colorado to visit Barry in jail there and then drove back to Oklahoma together. She said Barry pistol whipped her while they were stopped in Amarillo, and a witness saw and called the police saying Barry was beating her, but again, she refused to cooperate with police when they showed up to help her. Tiffany realized finally that she needed to get out. Her life depended on it.
Yeah.
So 3 months after that, in May of 2018, Tiffany stopped all contact with Barry and started going to counseling. And counseling gave her the strength to come forward about the November 2017 attack, the one where she ended up in the hospital. And Barry was charged with assault in October of 2018.
Good.
Yeah. And
Finally.
by the way, and Tiffany actually started living with her parents, Jack and Kay Chandler, sometime during all this. So I'm sure she felt a lot safer there and honestly probably needed all the support she could get at that point.
Yep.
And then in January of 2019, someone left a package of white powder on her porch. And technically it was like her parents' porch, but she's just like, what?
Yeah.
So she called the police and they tested the powder substance, but it was powdered sugar.
Jeez. When I was in college, we had this teacher. I was in criminal justice, and he was an actual cop. And he was like, "Oh, we're gonna do some drug testing today." Not on us, but he was like, "I brought fake drugs, and we're gonna use this systems we use, and I'll show you what's gonna turn the wrong color."
That's so cool.
It was so cool. So he had flour, obviously white substance, and then for the weed he had spinach. And so he was like,
Parsley.
He was like, if this were actually cocaine, this is the color it would turn. He's like, but see, you can see it's not that color, so this is not actually cocaine.
Wow.
But it was so funny. And he was like, thank God, if I were to leave this somewhere, I'd have more cops over here.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool though.
But yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, white powder reminded me.
Yeah, so obviously she called the police. And that's when they tested it. And they told her, look, someone is trying to scare you or intimidate you if they're leaving fake drugs on your doorstep.
Yeah.
And this was obviously terrifying for her and her family. So in June of 2019, Tiffany filed a protective order against Barry, which thank goodness. Barry was in some deep water, so he had already hired an attorney. His attorney's name was Keegan Harrose. It seems like in this story, every 3 months something big happens.
Oh, God.
Because 3 months later, in early September of 2019, a family member of Tiffany's stopped by her parents' home where Tiffany was still living. The family member walked inside and saw a horrendous scene.
Mm-hmm.
Tiffany and her parents, Jack and Kay, were found murdered.
No.
I know.
Oh.
They had each been shot multiple times with several different weapons. So sad. But police were called right away and began investigating, and they found surveillance footage on the family's property.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and the footage captured 2 individuals approaching Tiffany's house on foot.
Oh, it's giving me goosebumps.
One of the people approaching the house was described as, quote, obviously male and very tall, and the second was described as much shorter and smaller. So the pair had pulled up near the house in a car, which was a 2010 silver or light-colored Lexus sedan. Investigators believe the pair pulled the electric meter, cutting the power to both the surveillance footage and the home before they kicked down the door and went inside.
Jeez.
In addition to the surveillance footage, investigators would later find a dark-colored baseball cap left near the area where the car had been parked, and DNA found on the cap was a match to Barry Titus.
Oh my God, surprising.
I know. This unfortunately wasn't a surprise to police, since there were pending felony domestic violence charges against Barry, and the statistics were not on her side that it would be anyone else besides her abuser.
Yeah.
But this left police wondering, who was the other person in the surveillance footage before it shut off? Who do you think it was?
I don't know. Maybe a friend of his?
It was his lawyer. Like, she is crazy.
Oh, no.
So why would she do that? Well, I'll tell you why she would do that. Keegan's former law partner, David Bedford, revealed to police that Keegan and Barry were dating.
And how long has she been his lawyer for?
A few months at this point.
Oh.
Not super long. I mean, he had a lawyer before.
I feel like this would be a conflict of interest.
You think? But he had been her lawyer, like, before Tiffany, like, got the restraining order.
Yeah.
But it was pretty new. And David didn't keep this to himself before the murder that they were dating. No, he said he had concerns about Keegan and one of her clients for months. He claimed to have reported his concerns to the Oklahoma Bar Association and the Oklahoma County District Attorney months previously, and nothing had happened because she was still his attorney leading up to the murder.
Mm-hmm.
So now investigators were listening to David, but it was too late. And investigators from the Okmulgee County Sheriff's Office came to David that following Friday about both the homicide and Keegan's potential involvement. So David Bedford said investigators showed him the surveillance video of the 2 people believed to be involved in the murders, and Bedford said he, quote, couldn't tell who was in the video. Then he says the investigators asked him if he knew where they could find Keegan. And he told them.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Police arrested Keegan Harrose Friday afternoon in Oklahoma County. Sources close to the investigation told News 4 Harrose is being held in the Oklahoma County jail for allegedly intimidating a state witness. We'll get to that later.
Oh.
David said he has watched as Keegan has deteriorated and calls the situation very sad and very tragic.
Dang.
Because I'm guessing if he went into law with her, she wasn't always like crazy, at least outwardly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to put that much trust into someone to run a business.
Exactly. So the reason investigators were able to arrest Keegan without David being able to identify her in the surveillance video is because Keegan's brother, Jacoby Kelly, later turned over an AR-15 rifle that he thought may have been used in the triple homicide.
Oh.
Yeah. Barry and a female, later identified as Keegan, allegedly first purchased the weapon from a previous owner who had a shooting range on his property. He told officials the couple had fired his AR-15 along with a second AR-15 they got from their vehicle at the shooting range the day of the purchase, according to a statement.
Mm-hmm.
The witness said that no one had fired any other weapon in the area since that time, and officials collected the shell casings at the scene.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
At least they, weren't smart enough to pick up the shell casings when they shot.
Yeah. So
that there
they
was
actually
evidence
were
able
doing
to be
their
left
job.
behind.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And they later matched those shell casings to the ones found at the murder scene.
Nice.
Which I'm so, proud of Keegan's brother because turning in your sister.
I don't even, yeah. I don't even know how hard that would
but
be.
like, how could you live with yourself if you didn't?
And like,
you
were they close siblings?
I mean, they were close enough for her to go shoot guns, and buy and have that sort of relationship.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy. But authorities believe Keegan was an active part of carrying out the triple homicide and that it wasn't her first attempt to target the family. Remember the suspicious package?
Yeah.
So one of Keegan's other clients, Jose Uribe, later admitted to planting the package, which he believed contained meth. Keegan allegedly told Jose that she wanted him to plant the evidence as an act of revenge because someone living in the home had testified against one of her clients. She also wanted to weaken Tiffany's case and discredit her by getting her tied up in a drug charge.
Oh my God.
Like,
how manipulative.
Crazy. And so obviously, like, he felt manipulated to do it.
Yeah.
Because he's already in trouble for other things. Like, it's just so sick. Keegan instructed Jose to reach out to his handler in a drug trafficking case and report the drugs were being sold out of Tiffany's home. And can I just say, other than that being psychotic, she must be a pretty crappy lawyer if she has to lie and do illegal things to, like, weaken the other case.
Seriously.
Like, that's insane.
Like, your case isn't strong enough on your own.
Exactly.
So you have to weaken other people's cases.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Keegan was later charged in September 2019 for witness tampering in connection with that incident. Those charges are still pending. Keegan's license to practice law was suspended in February 2020 by the Oklahoma Supreme Court, according to Tulsa World. And I actually Googled her name and her law practice was still listed.
Interesting.
Yeah, it says permanently closed in red.
Oh.
And I really wanted to, like, give her a bad review, but
No,
you can't. You can't.
I did research about this person and she's really mean.
But some people, you can't do it now because
Yeah.
it's closed, but some people did before it closed, and it was like
What
wild.
were they?
One person was like, she'll really help you get the job done if you want to get rid of people, and gave 1 star.
Oh no.
Craziness.
Oh,
like, people
no.
got at her and someone shut it down after like maybe 5
Oh
reviews.
my gosh.
Yeah, nuts.
Oh, that's intense.
But yeah, Keegan was also accused in Oklahoma City federal court for buying a weapon for Barry just a month before the shooting and later pleaded guilty to a single federal firearms count. She was sentenced in March to 2 years in prison for that charge, and then she was also charged in the federal incident for possessing firearms with the knowledge that the person she was purchasing it for was an unlawful user of a controlled substance at the time. So Barry received a 3-year federal prison sentence for the firearm charges, and Barry and Keegan are each facing 3 counts of premeditated murder and 1 count of burglary in the first degree in the triple homicide case. And they're both in federal custody, and I hope they both rot there for the rest of their lives. And the case is going to go to court. Like, we don't know when because it's been delayed, but that will be one that we will certainly keep everyone updated. Yeah. A lawyer.
That's so bad.
So crazy. Like, what are you doing, woman?
Well, that was a good one.
Thanks.
Makes
I wish I
you-
had like more details, but I think because it hasn't actually gone to court yet.
Exactly.
It's just really hard.
Because you're going to
it's
have
so
all the
crazy.
information too about the trial and everything. Like, that's
all the
gonna-
trial notes.
Yup.
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be a good update.
Yeah. Hey everyone, have you ever had the idea to start your own podcast but had no idea where to start? We had no idea either until we found Buzzsprout.
It is hands down the easiest and best way to launch, promote, and track your podcast. Buzzsprout has made our experience with podcasting both fun and stress-free by listing our show on all major podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few.
You'll get a great-looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how and where people are listening, tools to promote your episodes, and much more.
Following the link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know we sent you, gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and helps support our show.
Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout.
And remember to stay scary.
Stay safe.
So, for mine, I started to do research on one thing, and then I only found a page. So I was like, no. So I started to do research on another thing, and then I only found a page. And I was like, what the hell? And then I found something that connected it to something, and then that's where I took off.
Building bridges.
Seriously. But so the thing that I found, I wanted to read it still because it was really cool. So this is the thing I only found a page of. So this isn't like the main thing, but it was really cool, and I had to tell you.
Okay.
So it's called the Parallel Forest.
Huh.
Okay. So the Wichita Mountains are located in southwestern Oklahoma near Lawton and are known for being beautiful and picturesque. It has been a wildlife refuge since 1901, which makes it the oldest managed wildlife facility in the United States Fish and Wildlife Service system. So it is 59,020 acres and is home to many different species of plants, birds, reptiles, amphibians, all your naturey things. It also offers a wide range of activities like rock climbing, hiking, camping, fishing, and just watching the wildlife. There's also a nice 0.8-mile hiking trail that loops through the area. We could do that, not even a mile.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So most of the park is extremely popular and populated, but there is an area that is not too well known, the Parallel Forest. So this forest is man-made and was made by the federal government during the Dust Bowl as an experiment to deal with the effects of said Dust Bowl.
Man-made forest?
Uh-huh. So super quick, the Dust Bowl occurred in the 30s and lasted for about a decade. So during this time, a severe drought hit. Due to this drought and a failure to apply the proper farming methods in a very dry land, severe dust storms began popping up in the American prairies. These storms were so bad that they actually damaged the and agriculture of these areas. This incident only intensified the impact of the Great Depression and even pushed people to move to other areas to find work. So the trees were planted in such a way as to stop some of the wind and dust from continuing to damage the crops. So this forest, rightfully named the Parallel Forest, has over 20,000 red cedar trees planted exactly 6 feet apart in every direction for over 16 acres.
Wow.
So literally, you're standing at one tree, all around you at different points, other trees are planted exactly 6 feet away.
You would get lost for sure.
Super creepy. So needless to say, this forest and the unnatural placement of the trees has brought with it ghost stories, stories of hauntings, and even rumors of satanic rituals. So it's easily spotted along Route 115 in the Wichita Mountains, as you can see a line of cedars that start this forest, like literally just like a curtain of cedars, which is really creepy.
Yeah, it's too perfect to be nature.
Yeah.
Like, that's too much.
And they chose the cedars because they grow straight up. They don't like grow out.
So they couldn't possibly like blend in.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
And because the trees are so close together, the canopy blocks out a good amount of sunlight, which brings about a really eerie feeling in the forest. So I tried to find like hauntings or anything in the forest. Literally nothing, because people tried to prove it with science. So in the middle of the forest is a rock formation, but we love science. We totally trust science.
Yeah, we trust science.
By the way.
But it doesn't tell like as good of a story sometimes.
Yes, exactly. So in the middle of the forest is a rock formation that many believe was used as a satanic altar. Visitors have felt weird here and gotten weird vibes when standing near the altar. Others have said that they heard yelling and old war drums beating near this altar. People have reported that the whole forest has eerie vibes. People have reported seeing ghosts with no heads, capturing orbs and photos, hearing weird noises, strange whispers, being touched by something unseen, just to name a few. But that's literally all the information I could find. There was literally nothing else. And I was doing some research at work on my break. And I was like, well, I'm not going to like watch a YouTube video at work. So I just like stopped. So then I started to look at creepy forests. I was like, I'll just do a ton of creepy forests in Oklahoma. Well, this was the only forest. So then I was like, I remember this town called Spencer. So I was like, I'm going to look into like the creepy things there. And then that led me to the main thing I'm going to talk about.
Very nice.
So a little background of this town of Spencer. It's located just outside of Oklahoma City. And in that town is an evil place known as the Purple Church. So the Purple Church is actually considered to be one of the most haunted places in Oklahoma, but it isn't actually purple and it isn't actually a church.
I was going to say, like, what?
Yeah. So naturally, the road that you'll find the Purple Church off of is said to already look haunted. The road is Wilshire Boulevard, but Wilshire is also private property, so you won't be able to go there. Like, we won't be able to add it to our list of places to visit. You can only go if you get permission from the owner.
We could do that.
Hi, we have a podcast. Can we come look at this
Can
property?
we like just take a look real quick?
But the Purple Church can only be reached on foot. So you'll drive down Douglas Street until you can't drive anymore. Then you'll turn onto the haunted-looking Wilshire Boulevard. From there, you'll continue to drive until you see the True Grit Sand and Mining sign. And from that point, you'll just start walking. But like I said, private property, you need permission. The websites made it very clear that you needed permission to go here. So the Purple Church is the site of a former church that once stood on this land, but the church was torn down. So now all that remains is a concrete slab and a basement. Like, literally just the horrible things of a house are remaining.
Wow.
Like, you go downstairs into this, like, creepy basement.
Nope.
The concrete slab and basement are covered with spray-painted purple satanic pentagrams, which is exactly how it got its name, the Purple Church. The location is rumored to be the spot of many satanic rituals and sacrifices. It's believed that when a full moon falls on a Saturday, cult members will meet at the Purple Church to perform rituals like a virgin sacrifice. Though there is no proof of any human sacrifices occurring here, there have been many animal carcasses and bones found around the area.
I told you Oklahoma's wild.
Right.
Wild.
Animal bones have been found hanging from trees, on makeshift altars, or just along the path that leads to the church. One witness even claimed to have found a huge tub just filled with animal parts. Oh. And to add to the creep, a sleeping bag was laid out in front of the tub. So someone is laying and sleeping in front of a tub full of animal parts. I don't like it.
They need to just demolish this whole structure.
Yeah, just blow it up.
Yeah.
So visitors have reported being touched and even scratched, hearing strange noises and disembodied voices, and seeing strange lights in the woods. Some have reported the smell of death lingering. Others say that they have been chased off of the property by men in robes.
Okay, wait, you know what I just thought? Maybe, because this is on like a private property, right? Yeah. Maybe the owner is like putting things there to scare people.
Well, the owner has also chased people off with a gun.
Oh.
So, you know.
Yeah.
Mix up there.
Yeah.
Others have been chased down the road by someone in a large truck with its headlights off. So they're just like, think of, what's that movie? Jeepers Creepers, like where they're driving and the truck's like just following them behind. I know. Some claim that nails are placed in the road in order to strand motorists there. So like they'll try to turn around and their tires will all go flat. Wow. That's like my biggest fear. I'm getting anxiety talking about it.
I will drive till the rubber's off the metal of my tires.
Right. Oh, I had a flat tire once, and that's what happened. Like, literally, I was driving, and I heard this noise, and I was like, oh my God, that does not sound like how a car tire should sound. And I pulled over into a parking lot. Tire was completely flat. I messaged all you guys that one day. I was like, look at this shit.
Okay, one time, I got a flat tire on the same road a week apart. So I then avoided that road for like a year.
Was it around here?
It was right by your old apartment.
Oh, no. Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
So there are some crazy people who have actually descended the stairs that lead into the basement. Those who have reported a heavy, ominous feeling so powerful that it makes them turn around and leave immediately. It is also believed that a man named Sean Sellers was the first to use this property for satanic rituals. So that's who we'll be talking about today, is Sean Sellers. A good amount of the information I got was from, surprise, surprise, Murderpedia. But there was one source that was labeled as his confession. So I got a lot of his childhood information from this confession that apparently he said.
His confession that he's trying to sell to us. Well, Sean Sellers.
Oh, God. Who went into the cellar of the basement.
Wow, we are on fire.
Right there. But so I tried to find this exact source online to like see it online, but I could not find it anywhere. He did have a website, and apparently his confession was pasted on there, but I again, didn't feel comfortable looking for this website where I was doing my research, so I just
totally understandable
stuck it out with Murderpedia. So Sean Richard Sellers was born in California on May 18th, 1969 to his 16-year-old mother, Vonda Bellifato, and an alcoholic father. Not much is known about his father other than that his parents got a divorce when Sean was only 3 or 4 years old. Shortly after the divorce, when Sean was 5, his mother met and married a truck driver named Paul Lee Bellifato. His mother, Vonda, and Paul would travel across country often together, leaving Sean in the care of his relatives. So he was usually left with his papa, Jim Blackwell, and his grandma, Geneva. Other times, he was left with his papa's parents. Sometimes Vonda and Paul would take Sean along with them, but most of the time, Paul and Vonda would be gone for weeks at a time, stopping by to see Sean when they could. So this part actually really broke my heart. So his confession says that every time his mom and Paul left, he would smile, he would wave, he would act normal, but then he would go up to his room where no one would see him, and he would cry every single time. I know he turns into like a really bad dude, but that part really broke my heart.
Oh.
And like what Morbid says, feel bad for the kid, not the killer.
Yeah, definitely.
So Sean didn't really understand what a divorce was at the time, but he knew that he was considered different. His grandparents, his parents, and he all had different last names. So he said that in the small town he grew up in, this was definitely noticed and it made him stand out. Around age 6 or 7, Sean began hearing voices that often criticized him, but because of his age, he thought that everyone heard these voices.
Oh.
He was also very paranoid at this age. He would attach a string to his door and brush the fringe of a rug in one direction before leaving the room.
So he was OCD for sure.
Well, it was in a way that he could see if anyone entered his room after he left.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Well, at age 8, he moved to LA with his parents. They ended up living in a complex with his Aunt Terry where children weren't allowed, which it's weird that like kids wouldn't be allowed here. But so Sean...
And why would they move there with a child?
They're horrible parents.
I mean, it's like clearly their child has severe mental health issues and then they're not helping at all. They're making things worse.
And at this point, his parents are only like 24.
Wow.
Like he's 8 and they're only 24. If I did math right. So Sean wasn't allowed to... Thank you. So Sean wasn't really allowed to be a kid. He had to be quiet. He wasn't allowed to meet new people and he had to stay hidden. If he misbehaved or acted too much like a kid, he would be yelled at by his mom. And school was no better. It was a huge school, completely different from the school he had attended before. He was bullied. He had run-ins with gangs. Just not a great place to be. Not surprisingly, as it seems so often, Sean's home life was not a stable one, and he was exposed to violence and humiliation often. It is reported that while he got along with his mother and stepfather, his mother would beat him as well as his grandfather. His mother would hit him with many different things, pretty much anything that she could get her hands on in the moment. Sean said he felt like he had to walk on eggshells around her. He said that he hated her as much as he loved her. He would also experience abuse from his uncle who lived with them. He said that he had been molested by this uncle. Sean had a problem of wetting the bed even up to the age of 13 or 14.
That's a sign of a serial killer, right?
Mm-hmm. So because of this, his uncle would make him wear diapers at that age. So if Sean happened to wet the bed 2 nights in a row, his horrible, disgusting, pitiful uncle would make him wear the soiled diaper on his head all day long. Should have given a little trigger warning at the beginning of this episode.
Yeah,
like
this whole episode.
There's some bad stuff in this.
Yeah.
And like I said, violence was a common practice in Sean's house. At a young age, one of his uncles took him hunting. The uncle tried to teach Sean that in order to kill an animal, you had to step on its head and pull on its leg, which is inhumane and horrible. Like, you're not supposed to kill animals that way. Sean recalls that once he went out hunting with this uncle. They found a wounded raccoon. So this part is pretty bad, so skip ahead like 15, 30 seconds if you need to. So they found the wounded raccoon, and his uncle put an axe on the raccoon's head and pulled on its legs until the head came off. To add to the humiliation, Sean was often called a wimp by his uncle and his stepfather because he usually refused to take part in these violent acts. So this is where the Mcdonald Triad comes to mind. It's spoken a lot of in true crime, so let me explain what it is. And no, it's not a Big Mac, McChicken, and chicken nuggets.
I was like, what is this?
So it's all...
Thank you for the disclaimer.
So it's also known as the Triad of Sociopathy or the Homicidal Triad. It's the 3 factors that are predictive of or associated with violent tendencies that often relate to serial offenders. Mm-hmm. So the presence of 2 out of these 3 are usually signs that this individual will have a higher likelihood of developing violent tendencies in the future. So the first is arson, so setting fires. This one is usually present when the individual has experienced repetitive episodes of humiliation, like what his uncle did to him when he would wet the bed. The repeated humiliation can lead to feelings of anger and frustration and a need to be released in some way, usually in the form of setting fires, though we don't have any knowledge that he would do that. So we'll cross that one out. Cruelty to animals is the next.
Check.
So I feel this fits Sean because he didn't necessarily engage in the violence towards the animals, but he certainly saw it and experienced it. Though at one point he said that he had wanted to be a vet, but, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then bedwetting. So like you said, after the age of 5, this is like the final one of the 3. For it to count as the triad, the bedwetting has to occur twice a week for at least 3 consecutive months. So we all know he did this. And like you said, it's one of the traits. So we can clearly start to see where a lot of his adult behavior is coming from. So by the time Sean was 16, he had already moved around 30 times. He said that he never stayed in one place for more than a few months. Due to the constant moving, Sean found that it was easier to isolate himself rather than make friends who he would soon have to say bye to. So he never made any lasting friendships. During the time that Sean was a teenager, he had a lot of anger in him, obviously. So backing up just a teeny bit to when he was 13, his dad's nephew Stephen came to live with them. Stephen was 18 at the time, so Sean really looked up to him. Stephen is also the one who introduced Sean to ninjutsu, which according to Wikipedia is the strategy and tactics of unconventional warfare, guerrilla warfare, and espionage reportedly practiced by ninjas.
What?
Yeah. So Sean got really into ninjutsu for one reason, and I believe this is the reason. His dad liked Stephen and spent a lot of time with him, and that's something that Sean longed for. So Sean said that he and his dad never spent time alone together and that he just wanted his dad to like him.
Oh my gosh.
It's heartbreaking. So he wanted his dad to spend time with him like his dad spent time with Stephen. He said, quote, "I never consciously made this decision, but looking back, I realize now I wanted to be like Stephen so dad would like me." End quote.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So he had to move back with his Aunt Debbie and Uncle James again. At this time, his uncle was making fun of him for spending his money on martial arts. He was constantly ridiculing Sean. So he has no great uncles or aunts because I believe these are different uncles, aunts, whatever. So that fueled Sean's anger even more, and he eventually began reading books on ninjutsu that demonstrated different ways to kill people, including pictures and step-by-step directions, ways to sneak up on someone and kill them. So ninjutsu today is about self-defense, but back then, not so much. Zen was the philosophy of these books, and by that, it meant being able to kill without suffering from a conscience. So not like Zen, like I'm at peace, but like being able to kill someone and like not feeling anything about it. So the family moved to Colorado when Sean was 15, and he absolutely loved it there. He got involved in the Civil Air Patrol and even made it to the cadet commander of his squadron. He was studying response training and even graduated with honors. He was happy and had even put the whole ninjutsu and ninja stuff behind him. Like he was happy.
Wow.
Until his parents announced that they would be moving one more time back to Oklahoma. Sean begged his parents to let him stay in Colorado. He loved it, and like I said, he was actually happy, but they moved, and for Sean, that was the last straw. He said that something just broke inside of him that day, and his anger reached a whole new level. He focused just on school, and while at school in Putnam City North High School, he was very intelligent and performed well. His teachers described him as being a good student. They mentioned how he loved comic books and was a talented artist. But over time, he became more and more emotionally disturbed and started to pull away and detach from reality. Then he got involved in the occult.
Oh, gosh.
This is when he met a witch who introduced him to black magic, and from there, Sean found an interest in Satanism. Two things primarily interested him: the freedom that Satanism provided, and it promised the power to control your life and to control others. He was also drawn to Satanism due to his very large hatred for God. He talked a lot about how, his parents would say they were Christian or whatever, but they would never go to church. They would be violent. They would beat him. They would try to get control of him.
Wow.
And he was like, that's all the signs that, like, that's what Satanism is. And he's like, that's why I just felt like I fit in there.
Wow.
So Sean was a sophomore when his obsession with good and evil really started to kick in. God and Satan, kind of all that stuff, and it started to grow. He began to practice satanic rituals nightly. He kept vials of blood in the refrigerator at home and would bring them to school and drink them in front of others.
What?
He would perform acts of self-mutilation. He would take a satanic Bible to class and even talked about demons flying and influencing him.
Oh my gosh.
He even wrote things on his own body, talking about renouncing God and only serving Satan. These were usually written in blood. This behavior eventually intensified, and Sean began doing drugs in order to keep himself awake so that he could continue performing his rituals. But when he did sleep, his dreams were killed with killing and mutilating people. It started off as dreams involving random people, but slowly the dreams began to shift to involving his parents. So remember how I mentioned that he heard voices in his head from a young age? Well, Sean said that as he practiced Satanism and practiced and performed rituals, those voices started to change, and he came to realize them as the voices of demons, and that to him was no big deal. But at some point after getting into Satanism, Sean had tried to get out. He called a prayer hotline, went to prayer meetings, but no one was able to help him because at this time, no one knew what to do. No religious individual had knowledge of how to help him. And
you get holy water and literally cleanse everything on him. Something.
But this was... I'll talk about it in a little bit, but like this was around the Satanic Panic time. So it was also, people just didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
So at this point, he decided that he was already doomed. He might as well embrace it. So he was like, why would I go to hell, as this person who tried to right things? I should just go to hell and I'm going to be the ruler down there. So, yeah. He did make friends, though, with a dude named Richard Howard. They became friends over their involvement in Satanism. Sean and Richard would talk about dark and evil things together. They would plan out different robberies and rapes they wanted to commit and would plan exactly how to do it. At this point, to them, it was just something that they would talk about to pass the time and to get a laugh out of. You know, like how we talk about dogs. They just talk about this horrible stuff.
Oh.
But one night, September 8th, 1985, that all changed. Richard and Sean had been discussing actually robbing and harming Richard's boss, but something changed, and Richard decided he knew who he wanted to kill instead, Robert Paul Bauer. And the reason? One night, Richard went to Circle K where Bauer worked. It was like the midnight shift. It was late. So Richard started up a conversation with Bauer in the hopes that he could sweet talk his way into having Bauer sell him beer. Well, Bauer didn't, and that made Richard incredibly angry. Richard...
He knew he wouldn't sell him.
Because he's underage. He's like 16. Richard had even mentioned killing Bauer in those rants he and Sean would have about wanting to kill people. So when they decided on Bauer, they had decided it was time to prove their allegiance to Satan.
Wow.
Sean said, "We began breaking the 10 commandments. Only one remained. Thou shalt not murder." Which reminds me of American Horror Story. The 5th season is Hotel, and there's like the 10 Commandments killer. It's really good.
I haven't seen it, but...
You need to watch it. It's creepy, but it's really good. So the two boys went back to Richard's house and loaded up. They grabbed Richard's grandfather's .357 revolver. I don't know how to say any of these gun names. And his brother's .22 rifle. Sean said that he didn't know Bauer, the man they were preparing to kill, but he just wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. They arrive at the remote Circle K where Bauer was working the midnight shift. The two boys walked in and bought some sodas, then they started talking to him. They tried to make it seem casual about asking Bauer if it was dangerous for him to not have cameras in his store. Someone might walk in and rob him, then kill him. Bauer had told the boys he wasn't worried. The register only held $50 at any given time, and the rest of the money was stored in a safe in the back. No one would kill him over that.
Too bad that's not why they were there.
How chilling.
Yeah.
At this remark from Bauer, Sean and Richard literally looked at each other with gross, amused looks on their faces. The two boys then walked back outside to look at Richard's car for some reason. That's when Richard looked at Sean and said, "Let's do it." Sean took the revolver and began to walk into the store when all of a sudden he realized he couldn't do it. He couldn't just kill someone. That is until the voice inside of his head told him that he was a coward. That clicked something in his head. Sean walked back into the store. Bauer had just taken a sip of his coffee, and as he was lowering the cup onto the counter, Sean was raising his gun. Just as Bauer lifted his eyes to look at Sean, he pulled the trigger. But at the literal last second, he flinched, and the shot completely missed Bauer, who took off and was shot at again. The bullet also missed, but did cause him to fall. He pulled himself back up and ran to hide behind the counter. As he was peeking over the counter, Richard shouted, "Do it," and Sean pulled the trigger.
Oh, no.
Blood splattered everywhere, and then Mr. Bauer was still. Richard tried to steal the money from the safe but couldn't get it open, so the two boys ran out. As they were driving away, they were laughing.
Wow.
Sean was only 16 at the time. He said that at one point he wanted to tell his dad what he did. He wanted his dad to see he was strong and not weak, but he didn't. He kept it a secret. Sometimes he would be aware that he had killed somebody, walking tall, really proud, having the secret.
Wow.
But other times, he didn't even think of it. It wasn't even a registered thought in his mind. Later that year, Sean met a girl named Angel, and they fell in love, which I thought was kind of ironic.
So ironic.
Right?
Of all the names in the world.
Right?
Wow.
So Angel was 15, which wasn't weird because Sean was only 16. But Angel had dropped out of high school and smoked. And there was a huge problem with this. Sean's mother, Vonda, hated Angel. Sean thinks it was because his mother saw so much of herself in Angel.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yep, having had Sean at the age of 15, 16.
You know, the right choices, whatever.
So one day, Sean's mother blew up on him and a huge argument occurred. Vonda told Sean to get out of the house in a much more colorful way, and that's exactly what he did. Richard helped Sean pack his shit and they moved out. But the next day, he was forced to move back home, and he was told he would do what he was told. That was that. Things continued to get worse from there. His mother would constantly shit-talk Angel, and one night that led to an actual fight between Vonda and Sean. Vonda hit Sean, as she typically did, but Sean was bigger and stronger now, so he actually pushed her. But that fight was making the anger in Sean build and build, to a point where Sean decided that was it. He wanted to kill his mother.
Wow.
He went to the store that day and bought rat poison and poisoned her coffee. But that didn't kill her, even after drinking 3 cups.
That is wild.
So Sean was still continuing his plans for how he would kill his mother.
How about leave? Like, you don't have to be there, dude. Leave.
Well, his parents made him stay because he's 16.
I know.
He's technically a minor. So after 3 days of speed, marijuana, and no sleep, on March 4th or 5th, 1986, Sean executed his plan. Before his parents went to bed that night, Sean snuck into their room and took his father's .44 revolver from his bedside drawer. He then went back into his room and waited as his parents went to bed and eventually fell asleep. When he knew they were asleep, he performed a ritual and dressed in his only pair of black underwear and slowly crept back into his sleeping parents' room. Sean said at this moment there was nothing but cold hatred within him. He didn't consider it as committing murder. No, he was simply removing an obstacle that was in his way, and after that he would be free. The way he did it just seems so cold too. He killed his parents in cold blood as they slept. He literally walked up to their bed, put the gun to each of their heads, and pulled the trigger.
That's cowardly.
He had to fire twice at his mother because she woke up after the first gunshot that he did to his father. Yeah. Jeez. So after that, Sean mentioned feeling relieved and then a huge weight had been lifted off of his shoulders. So I need to describe what Sean describes as a blink. So it sounds like a way he switches between moods. So he said he would be cold and callous, then blink, and he would be crying out of the true grief for the fact that he killed his parents, then blink. He would be calm, cold, and collected again. He said this started a while ago, like when he killed Bauer, the convenience store worker. When he walked into the building the first time, he was scared and knew he could never kill someone, then blink, he walked straight up to Bauer and pulled the trigger.
I was going to say, that was a quick switch too.
So back to the night of the murder. So Sean knew that he had to do something with the bodies of his parents, so he decided to set up a scene to make it look as though an intruder had broken in and killed his parents. He was gonna, run over to his friend's house, this whole big plan.
Act like a huge catastrophe happened and he doesn't know what happened.
Yep. But I couldn't really find anything about how he was arrested or how he was caught. I looked everywhere, like a ton of different websites, could not find a thing. But we do know that after the murder, he went to his friend Richard's house and told Richard that he had just killed his parents. So from Sean's recollection, he remembers that he had been up for 3 days. He was out of speed and just wanted to sleep. He had been driving, so he arrived back home, did some homework, then performed another ritual before he went to bed. The next thing he recalls is waking up in a jail cell 2 days later on March 6th. So
maybe he was so strung out on something.
Who knows? So because I couldn't find anything about the arrest, we're just going to kind of move on to the trial.
Also, really quick, he was still doing his homework.
Right.
That just shows how all over the place he really is.
Like, he did his homework, and then he's like, I'm just going to go to bed, and then he just killed his parents in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during his trial, Sellers told the courtroom that he had been practicing Satanism at the time of the crimes. Howard, his friend Richard, did testify at the trial and confirmed that Sellers did come to his house after the murders and confessed what he had done. He also said that Sellers committed the murders as a practicing Satanist. Howard was originally charged with first-degree murder for the convenience store worker, but the charges were dismissed by the state in exchange for his testimony against Sellers. He was instead given a 5-year suspended sentence. After the first murder of Bowers and throughout the trial, Sean would have different versions of the events that unfolded that night based on who he was talking to. So in one story, it was an act of revenge because Bowers wouldn't sell Richard the alcohol, who was underage. Not only that, but Bowers had been rude in his refusal of the alcohol.
Oh.
The other story that he would tell was all based in Satanism. This religion demanded that he break all 10 commandments, and he was powerless to refuse. The commandment he had to break, thou shalt not kill. In his third version of events, Sean stated that he had been completely unaware during the whole event, like he had essentially blacked out. He said after the event that he was shocked and confused that he could have committed an act of such savagery.
I don't know about that.
I don't either. So then, a couple months later, he killed his parents while they slept. So he also had a few versions of why those murders were committed. The first, again, was that he had blacked out, and but he did claim he knew the motive behind why he had killed his mother. Like I mentioned, Vonda hated Sean's new girlfriend, Angel, and she was attempting to keep Sean away from Angel, and he just couldn't allow that to happen. And then again, Satanism was to blame, and the demands of the religion were the driving force behind the murder. He took this even further with the devil made me do it defense, saying that he had been possessed by a demon at the time of the murder. Apparently, during all of his rituals, he had invited a certain demon whose name wasn't familiar to me, but I'm too scared to say it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it.
Yeah. So he invited this certain one into his body and, let it possess him. Sean's legal counsel tried to take another approach and tried to say that his involvement with Dungeons and Dragons had been the main culprit for why he committed these crimes.
Okay. How many kids play that game?
Yeah.
And how many of them are doing what Sean's doing?
Exactly. They said that the game dictated his actions and that he was disconnected from consciousness of any wrongdoing and responsibility because of this game. So it really was just Dungeons and Dragons. It led Sean to Satanism, and Satanism led him to commit the murders. His young mind was warped and confused by the fantasy world he was playing in, and the occult world had lured him in.
That's a stretch.
Yes, this was his defense's way of trying to provide a more secular version of his own claims of demonic possession. Mm-hmm. I should also mention that this was right around the time of the Satanic Panic, which I also talked about in our Washington State episode when I talked about Magic the Gathering. So mainly during this time, Satan was to blame for absolutely everything. So it didn't really help that Sean said he was a practicing Satanist and all that stuff. So people actually latched onto this claim by Sean, and he kind of became the poster boy for Satanic Panic and all of the evil that would come from getting involved in Satanism. So people would literally say, like, don't be like Sean. Yeah. So Sean had also made numerous appearances on different mass media programs during this period of Satanic Panic. Like, he appeared on Geraldo about Satanism, which was like a really popular show back then. And he appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show.
What?
Yeah. They literally were doing it all about, like, tell us what Satanism is. Blah, blah, blah.
Oh my gosh.
He also appeared on 48 Hours, MSNBC, and the A&E Network. So back to the cases and the trial. The jury did not believe any of those claims. And in 1986, Sean Sellers was sentenced to death, making him the first person in over 40 years to be executed for a crime that was committed by someone under the age of 17, and the first and only person executed for committing a crime under the age of 17 since the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1966. The U.S. is one of only 6 countries in the world who have executed a minor.
Yeah.
Iran, Yemen, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Nigeria.
I'm sure like Russia and North Korea are also, like, a lot of them probably just don't admit it. You know what I mean? You know, there's probably more, but
yeah.
to be.
So in 1990, Sean ended up writing a book titled Web of Darkness, which did talk about his crimes at one point. He went into how he would black out during the periods of his crime and not remember anything that happened. He also wrote about how he felt helpless while practicing Satanism and felt there was no way out. But while in prison at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester, Sells became a Christian.
Okay. A little late for that, dude.
He said that only after deep introspection and converting to Christianity was he able to recall the deeds and motives for what he had done. So he said, like, you know, in his blacked out stage, he committed all of these things, and Christianity was what allowed him to, like, open himself up to figure out what he had done. Part of the description of this book says, quote, "From child of Satan to man of God." Like, please.
You are not a man, first of all. Don't call yourself a man.
Give me a break. Ugh. So 6 years after his sentencing in 1992, Sean's appeal team secured 3 physicians who were to perform a scientific quantitative measure on Sean's psychological construct. And they were planning on using an EEG, which is an electroencephalogram.
I've heard of EEG, but not the full.
Yeah, me either. So after this test, the physicians were able to conclusively confirm that Sellers suffered from MPD, which is multiple personality disorder. And though at the time there was no set way of determining MPD from an EEG, the judge found these results to be incontrovertible, pretty much meaning that they couldn't deny the results. And with that, I'm definitely not saying that anyone who has multiple personality disorder is going to commit murder, because that's not true. I'm just saying that in this case, they believed that he had it, which could have led to what he did.
Yeah, and like being untreated his whole life and like all of the other factors.
Exactly. So Sean's appeal was eventually denied. And on February 14th, 1995, he got married in prison. But that marriage was eventually annulled in 1997. Could not find out who he got married to. Nothing about it. It was always just one quick teeny sentence in all the sources I read. Experts...
If you're listening and you married him, let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Then again, in 1999, Sean tried to appeal his sentencing to the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. In his appeal, he stated again that he suffered from multiple personality disorder, which is now known as dissociative identity disorder. Experts believe that Sean had at least 3, but maybe as many as 8 alternate personalities.
Oh my gosh. I can barely keep up with mine.
2 of the personalities that the experts were able to identify and talk to were Danny, who was actually left-handed when Sean was right-handed.
What?
Because sometimes different personalities, like if you watch the movie Split, that's an incredible movie, but it it is such a true disorder because people will be a completely different person from themselves, like speaking a different language, writing with a different hand. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's insane.
And his other identity they were able to talk about was the controller. Didn't have much on that. Though there were others involved in his trial who didn't believe that he had multiple personality disorder, they did believe that he was playing up the role of mental health in order to get a lighter sentence.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, the appellate court ruled that there was uncontroverted evidence of his religious conversion, which meant that he must indeed suffer from multiple personality disorder, and the judges on the appeal panel agreed that Sean must have been, quote, insane at the time of the murders. They also said that it was too late to be raised on appeal. They said that if Sean truly did have a mental illness, it would have been identified relatively soon after the murders, not years later.
Yeah.
Which I can see both sides. Like, it does look like he's using it as an excuse. And then also at the same time, like, it's hard to diagnose mental health.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
especially in like the 90s. Like, I'm sorry. No.
For me, it's more like all of a sudden he's calling himself a man of God.
Yeah.
Like, no, he's trying to get a lighter sentence.
Yeah.
No.
So the judges that presided over his appeals all came to the same conclusion. Sean could very well be suffering from the personality disorder, and an alter personality could really have been the one who committed the crimes. But at this point, Sean's only path to this claim is through executive clemency, which is where the president, like the power of the president or the governor, is used to pardon a person of a crime.
Oh my gosh.
So like kind of what we talked about with Joe Exotic being in jail, thinking that Trump was going to pardon him. I could be wrong, but that's what my mind immediately went to. He then, at this point, began to campaign for his clemency. He thought he would have mercy or leniency due to his age at the time of the murders, his past involvement in Satanism, and his new religious conversion. Sean also tried to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, but that appeal was also declined. Years later, it appeared this blink had stopped, the one I told you about. He stated that he felt truly horrible for what he had done, and he said he had so much regret in him for what he took from the 3 he killed and the families of those 3. But on February 5th, 1999, at 12:17 a.m., Sean was finally executed by lethal injection after sitting on death row for about 13 years.
Wow.
7 relatives of Sean's stepfather, Paul Belifato, attended the execution. Sean's last words were from a modern Christian song. He said, quote, "Set my spirit free that I might praise thee. Set my spirit free that I might worship thee." As his last words.
I have goosebumps.
Yeah.
That's like really...
So Sellers' ashes, per his wishes, were spread in the woods of Colorado.
Let me guess where.
It didn't say.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was that forest that they built.
Oh, no, that would have been
like,
amazing.
What?
But this was in Colorado. The forest was in Oklahoma, Nora.
True.
But no, and like one of the websites I read about that, they were like, which is really odd because a lot of serial killers will operate in like woods and stuff in Colorado. And so they were like, this is like a little nod to true crime. And I was like, that's kind of creepy.
Huh.
But so that is Sean Richard Sellers.
Well, that is insane.
Yeah. This was I
Heavy.
had to come back. Like I would work on this for like an hour or so and then I'd be like, okay, I need to like go do something. I need to watch some TV. I need to play some games on my phone and then I'll come back to it.
Like too much to just sit down and knock it out.
Because sometimes I can do that. If I'm really into a case, I can just knock it out in like a couple hours. But this one,
is emotionally exhausting.
It is. So in this one, I was like, I just need to take like a little break.
Yeah.
So.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks for hanging in there this week. We had some crazy stories.
This was an intense week.
Oklahoma.
Right? Like, when I was talking to my mom when we first started this, she was thinking of random states. She's like, what's in Oklahoma? Like, what are you going to cover? And I was like, Mom, I have no idea. Well, here we are. Well, thank you for listening. As always, please send us in your creepy stories to ascarystatepodcast@gmail.com. And thank you so much to the people who have been sending us stories. It is so exciting reading them.
We love it. We absolutely love reading everything, and it makes us feel so excited to like see all the scary things happening to people. And also, we just created a Facebook page, so make sure to follow us on there. It's just called A Scary State Podcast.
And we post what Nora posts on Instagram, and we're trying to, get some fun discussions.
Yeah, so also follow us on Instagram at A Scary State Podcast. Might as well throw that in there.
And I think that's all we have for you guys. So stay scary.
Stay safe. Boomer sooner.